Iris van Herpen, welcome to In Fashion.
Thank you.
I want to start by going back to the earliest stages of your life and ask about your first memories of fashion. Can you remember when you first sort of became aware of fashion or of clothing?
Well, clothing, or special clothing, were introduced by my grandma. She collected all her life costumes and wigs and shoes and everything around it. She was really interested in theater. So I came there as a small child, dressing up in big dresses and sharing it with friends. I think that's my first memory of feeling that transformation when you wear something else. I mean, you come into a story like you feel like you're going into history, or you, as a small child, you suddenly feel like a grown-up woman in a dress like that. And I think that's my first fashion. Fashion memory. I don't think it's a fashion memory, but it's clothing. Yeah.
And that transformative aspect of fashion, you know, how you can almost become someone else by putting something on. Yeah. Is that something that's really stuck with you? Is that what got you interested in creating clothing yourself?
Yeah, I think it's part of it. I think it's more than that, but I think it's definitely part of it. You're really able to get yourself in a different mood, in a different feeling, or even sometimes in a different identity. And I think that's really nice to be able to control and to play with. Yeah.
But you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you studied ballet when you were growing up, is that right?
Well, studying, I never became like a professional ballet dancer or a school like that, but I did it a few times a week, so I was really passionate about it.
Is that what you wanted to be when you were growing up, a ballet dancer?
Well, when I was really small I did, but I quite have a fascination for materials and working with my hands, and I think after a few years of ballet I also noticed that I really like painting and working with my hands, and I think that interest became bigger than the dancing. I think the moving body and dance is a big inspiration, but I couldn't be a dancer myself because for me it's too abstract. You create something at that very moment, and what I really like is to let go of my work at a certain point. Like after a while, after I made a collection, it stays in Paris and people do things with it, or people wear it, or it goes to a shop or a museum, and it's out then. It's not part of me anymore, and I think I really like that, to be able to create something that afterwards gets its own life, and that I'm not part of it anymore. And dancing is even more personal, I think. You are the form of art, and for me that would be too much. Yeah.
I'm interested in this idea of sort of the individual within fashion and the designer within fashion, because I've read stuff, you've talked about this before when you've talked about why you love to collaborate with people, and you said, you know, it's not just about me and my world, it's you have to bring other people in, and I think that's quite an interesting way to approach fashion, because I think at the moment the industry certainly sort of fetishizes the designer, like the star designer, the key designer, the designer as celebrity, almost like that one person symbolizes a whole house. But for you, is it much more about this kind of collaborative journey, and much more about, from what you just said then, it sounded like removing yourself from the clothing?
Yeah, I can't imagine any designer itself really feeling like that it's all about him or her, because making collections and creating fashion is really always a big team of people that work together. And you can't do it on your own. You need the people that actually make it. You can design something, but it has to be made, and those people are just as important in the process as the design itself. And yeah, I like to go even a step further, to take people outside of my atelier into my world, or the other way around, that I step in their world to take inspiration for it. And I think I really hope to achieve like things that I can't create or even think of myself. And I really hope to expand the collaborations even to more material research and the technology research, because it opens up my possibilities, and therefore also my design process. And sometimes I think I wouldn't even see myself as an artist, but working with people and creating all together something that feels like an art project, but it's always with people. I don't think of it in myself only.
Is that something that sort of began when you were studying at the academy? Is that something that kind of, that idea of collaboration? Because I'm interested, we talked about where your interest in clothing started, but where that kind of passion for technology, because that's so central to what you do, obviously.
Yeah, it's really funny, because a few years ago a turning point came, because when I was on the art academy, I was almost against technology. Not that I was against it, but I just didn't know anyway how to work with it. I really believed in, I can do it by my hands, I don't need it. And I even had discussions with my computer teacher that he said, well, you really need that computer. And I said, well, I really don't need that computer. I can do all the drawings by hand, and I do the handwork myself, and I can do it like that. And of course you can, but and the same for collaboration. At that point I was so shy, I didn't even interact that much with my class around me. I was really in my own world, and I think at that point it was good, because it made me focus on my work. It made me work hard and focus and experience what I was looking for at that moment. And after a while, like I think the first 2 years that I started for myself, I mainly did handwork, not even using the sewing machine that much. Oh, wow. And then somebody introduced me to the 3D printing, and also to a company who does that, and to an architect. And then suddenly my world opened up, and I got less and less afraid for working with people, and I started enjoying it. And for me that was really a turning point of being scared. Or well, it's also scary as a creative person to share your process, because you're doing that, and it is scary, especially if you're not so aware of your process, or if you're not so aware of what you actually want, then it's even more scary. But yeah, at that point I started letting go, and I opened up more to people, and I'm really happy for that. That I'm less shy in terms of creating or sharing my creative process. Even with SHOWstudio, this project, I think it's also part of that. Like normally I don't think anybody ever saw me in a process from the beginning to the end. I normally don't share that with people, because I really don't like showing things that are not finished. Like now people look at the dress and they see all the mistakes, and it's for me it's quite frustrating, because I know, oh, that's gonna change, that's gonna change. And it's the same in collaboration. You open up for the whole process with somebody, and I really wasn't like that before. I had to grow into that. Yeah.
I'm interested. Sorry, should you pause? Sorry. That's fine. Yeah. I'm interested that you mentioned sort of that turning point with the 3D printing, because that's something I actually wanted to ask you quite a lot, because you've said some interesting stuff about 3D printing in the past, that you mentioned, you know, how in the future that could be such an interesting way for fashion to develop. You know, people could be sort of printing out their own clothes that exactly fit their bodies, and it got me thinking about sort of the future for the designer and how 3D printing will change fashion. What do you are you excited about that? What would you like to see, sort of the relationship between the designer and technology and fashion as a thing? What would you like to see happen with that?
Well, I wouldn't like to see that 3D printing or technology takes over everything. I mean, in the end, so a certain balance is always necessary. I do think 3D printing is really interesting because it could open the whole process of creation. I mean, now it's quite a long process in ready-to-wear, from making a drawing till it's in the shop. It's maybe a year or something, and 3D printing could make that process a lot faster. Like you could design something and it could be buyable online or even printable at home maybe in a week or something, or maybe even quicker. And I think that's something interesting. And on the other side, also what I find hard in the ready-to-wear is that so much clothes are made, but I think I don't know I don't know the amount, but maybe more than half of it is being destroyed or not being sold, or it's just this mass production of clothes, and it's a lot of pollution. And I think that's also a nice thing about the 3D printing. You could actually print what is bought. You don't need to produce beforehand. So it would actually be a lot better for the environment as well. But what I, for example, really like about handwork is that you really have like a handwriting of the person who makes the garment. There's no handmade garment that is exactly the same as the second one. And so I wouldn't want to see the whole world wearing 3D printed clothes, but I do think it's nice if part of it is made by it, because it's just a lot better for the environment, and it goes a lot quicker. So you can actually, as a designer, you can actually share your moments with your customer. Like now you have to think ahead, and you're not gonna share with people what you're gonna show in half a year or in a year. So you always have to sort of keep it secret. And I feel it would be nice to even share that process and that design even quicker. But I would always keep doing handwork, just to keep the craft in it and the human sense or something. I think in the end it's all about us, about people, and I wouldn't want to lose that factor.
I'm interested because there's a really interesting, it's not quite a contradiction, but it's almost like this dichotomy in your work between it being incredibly, and this is a word that gets overused in your context, but very futuristic and very modern and very forward thinking, and with the amazing materials you use and the technologies you embrace. But then there's an aspect of it which is also so kind of traditional and almost that rejects sort of, as you mentioned there, fast fashion, and you reject sort of some of the modern aspects of the industry. I'm really interested in that sort of contradiction you have. Do you get frustrated ever at the industry at the moment, how it works? Is that sort of what's inspired your work?
Well, I think I'm too young to be frustrated already.
That's good.
I'm
not.
No, I've only been working in fashion for a few years, and I'm only starting up the ready-to-wear. So for me, it's one big learning process. I'm not frustrated yet, but I do things that make me wonder. And one thing that I really don't want to be part of it is producing mass production and just being aware that most of it won't be sold, but will just be destroyed. And also thinking that cotton industry is such a big threat for the environment. I really would not like to be part of it, and I think it's much more of a challenge to start thinking what are other ways of creating clothes. I mean, yeah, I really feel I like 3D printing is one possibility we have now, but I really feel that there's much more possible in the near future, and I couldn't tell you now what it will be or how, but I really feel it can be a lot simpler than it is now. I really feel it's a complex process of that sketch to the trials, to the samples, to the factory, to the showroom, to the shop, to the customer. I feel that it can be a lot easier, and well, you see it changing with music or video and all those things, and yeah, I really think materiality will change, and also the process, and that contradiction you were talking about, I think that's really something inside me. It's also what I just told, like before I was really not doing anything with the computer, and now I do a lot with technology, and I think that contradiction is inside me, always looking for the best ways and combining them. I mean, the technology inspires me to do certain handwork techniques. For example, the 3D printing, I can make such a complex shape. It inspires me again for making it in another way than 3D printing by hand, and the other way around the same. The handwork inspires me for a 3D printing design. So I really think they complement each other. I wouldn't want to choose one way of working. It makes it boring, I think, as well. Yeah.
I want to talk a bit about sort of your influences and when you were sort of developing your aesthetic in fashion, because in many ways your work seems so unprecedented and so innovative. You know, it's hard to imagine that you're inspired by anyone. But were there designers, whether when you were studying or when you first started working, because I think you did do some placements within different houses, are there people who you look at and whose work inspires you?
There are a lot of people, artists, designers that inspire me, and one of them was Alexander McQueen, or it still is. I mean, Sarah makes really beautiful collections, and I think that's. I mean, I did an internship in London with them, and being there also makes you even more, I think, inspired by the whole brand, because you see how they work and you see the materials from clothes, and yeah, I think that's one of my inspirations still. Well, I really like what Givenchy was doing for the haute couture. I think they found also a nice way of combining old craft with newer techniques and more unexpected materials. I think there's a really nice balance. And then I also like Victor Wolf, what they do concept-wise. I mean, in a lot of collections, it's hard to really see the inspiration, and I think it's nice how direct they translate a concept. And yeah, I also can really admire people that really focus on patterns, like what you see with Comme des Garçons or Yamamoto. I find that really beautiful as well. In the haute couture, for me, it's less about patterns, but with the ready-to-wear, I focus more on the actual pattern design as well, and I find inspiration in them as well. Yeah.
I'd like to talk a bit about couture, because obviously that's where you've now moved into ready-to-wear as well, but you started in couture. That's kind of your background. What does couture mean to you? What is sort of couture in your mind?
Well, that's also something what changed. I mean, when I was in the academy, and when I was seeing haute couture or hearing the word, then I was really thinking about embroidery and big dresses, and I think that's a big part of couture. But now I see couture much wider than that. I really see it. For me, it's the inspiration of fashion. It's a story being told, and I think it's actually the way fashion is sold in the end as well, by making a really beautiful story. And for me, it's also my laboratory, like the place where I can put all my time and effort in something. And I think it's the part of fashion that you can really connect to art. I mean, a lot of people ask me, is fashion art? And it's the never-ending story. And I think big part of fashion is maybe not so much connected to art, but I think part of the haute couture is quite connected to art, if you look at the process and the amount of time and effort and love and everything in it. And it's the place where you can really discover new ways of working. And it's, I think, also the place where you have to put, or you have to dive into the history.
I'm interested that you mentioned the story and the history, because I don't think those are instinctively things that I would associate with the couture that you show. And I'm interested in what the starting point for you is when you're producing something. Because I was wondering before, and this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you, whether you're led by a technology or a material that you come across, or whether you're led by a concept or an idea. But now and there's a third one, I'm like, or is it the story? Is it that kind of narrative? How do you start? What's kind of... That's a big question. So.
No. The starting point is for me quite hard to define, because I think I said it before as well. The starting point for me is the hardest, because I'm inspired or led by so many things. It's the story, it's a material, it's a technique, it's an artist that I found at that moment, and then I have to decide what direction am I gonna choose? Is it the artist? Is it the material? Is it the story? Sometimes it fits really well together. Sometimes it doesn't. At the moment, I'm starting up my new collection for July, the haute couture, and inspiration is coming from all sides. I mean, I'm collecting materials that I find really inspirational. I find artists. I find a technique again, and where it exactly starts, I never know. Making decisions or taking that step into the collection is always quite an unconscious process. And I try to take a little bit of everything, but what is the main thing, I couldn't tell you. I really think it's a combination of everything a bit. A material can really directly inspire me to make something, especially when I have a material and just gonna do a lot of tests and a lot of moulaging, or that can bring a design, but at the same point there's always something from the moment that fascinates me. Like last season it was all about the voltage and electricity. And Carlos van Kamp, who was doing all his experiments with the Tesla coil, and I was fascinated by it, and I always have these things, and then it's a matter of combining the fascination of the moment with the material and the collaborators I work with, and bringing them all together. I think that's the hardest part.
Do you ever find it, I find that people view couture in a very set way, and there's a lot of discussion where people talk about couture as if it's somewhat sort of irrelevant now and outdated. And do you think about the future of couture? Is that something that you sort of are concerned by, or I'm interested in whether people were accepting of your work, being given this sort of perception of couture as being, as you said before, like big embroidered dresses that don't really have much relevance. Have people been accepting of what you do?
Yeah, they do. I have the feeling that the couture, I mean, you have the Fédération in Paris, and they actually invited me to show there. Before I didn't even see my work as being couture. I have the feeling couture opens up as well. I think whatever you do, it's always about finding new ways of doing something, and the couture is very much based on tradition. But yeah, even that is, I really feel it's opening up, and it's looking for new ways to combine with the old craft, and even an old craft can work really nice in a new material. So it's about combining the old world and the new world, and personally I really see a future for haute couture. Because what I see is, I find in the ready-to-wear world already that things and designs are so much repeating or coming back all the time. I almost feel that the world of ready-to-wear or fashion is relatively so short that we come back too often to the to the repeatment. I mean, I really think there is a place for haute couture to be the place where you can work on a new technique or on a new way of approaching your designs. And the world of ready-to-wear for me it's so fast. I mean, I couldn't. I said it before. I couldn't make ready-to-wear if I wasn't doing haute couture, because in haute couture I feel a certain freedom in my creation, and I think a designer needs that to be able to create. And in the haute couture I really feel I can explore a new technique like the 3D printing that wasn't wearable at the very start, but the technique was so interesting that I wanted to work with it, and now it's even adjustable to ready-to-wear. So in haute couture it's almost like architecture or art. You have a bigger amount of time because it's not about seasons. Sometimes for example, I collaborated with Neri Oxman, and then there was not enough time to develop the new material, so we just moved it to the next show. So it was a process of a year, and in the ready-to-wear you couldn't do that, because you just have to have that collection ready and to sell it. And that's why for me it's a perfect combination, like the laboratory in the haute couture to find out things, to develop a new material or a technique or a new silhouette or anything, and then I can adjust it into the ready-to-wear, and there's less time, but it's already done. So it's possible. I would feel really really locked up if I would only do ready-to-wear. Yeah.
This gets me really interested in sort of your general approach to fashion, and the idea of fashion being something that should be about, you know, commerciality and people buying things, because you've spoken quite firmly about not believing in sort of this, you know, form follows function idea, and it seems to me that you don't approach what you do in any way by thinking about just responding to a market. You know, there's got to be this sense of fashion offering something to the world. I think you've actually said that before.
Yeah.
Is that quite important to you? Do you tend to not think commercially? Is that something that you just kind of can't let yourself do?
Well, I don't think it's being forced. I don't try to not think about it, but it's just really not in my not in my system. I think even if I would like to, it's just not me. I think I also said that, like, creating something for me, it's almost instinctive, and at some moments that I really make decisions, I'm not in the here and the now. It's something. I can't find the words, but it's something not controllable for me. And because I'm not in the here and the now always, I also don't think about selling it afterwards. It's much more free than that. And yeah, I also believe in the simplicity that if you go for something where you really believe in, like if I have something in my head that I'm really confident about it, then you should do it in the best way possible, and then it will find its woman or its way. And of course, in the ready to wear, I adjust the design, and I'm more aware of, well, can you sit in it? Does it feel nice? How good is the material? How long are you able to keep it nice? And there's more practice, like practical thoughts in it, but still, it's not the leading point. It's not the first thing. It's part of it, but it's not the first thing. No.
I'm really interested in this idea of fashion being, good and bringing something to the world and offering something, because I think that is something that the pace of the industry has perhaps made us lose. There's not this focus on fashion contributing something beyond just the individual who kind of wears it for that season. And is that something you're kind of really trying to sort of is that something you're trying to sort of change? Do you want people to kind of put fashion on a higher level than they are doing at the moment?
Well, I see fashion as something really big, and it would not be realistic to only have fashion designers working like me. I mean, well, there are a lot of people on this earth. You do need sort of a mass production, but I think it has gone too far. I also almost feel that nationalities or countries lose their identity in terms of clothing, because it's all getting global, because the brands become so big and they lead, and they are again the inspiration for all the companies that copy. So it becomes in the end one big suit or one big dress, and I find that really a shame that to begin with, that you don't see so much difference in countries or in cultures anymore. And then if you go even more, or if you zoom in even more, that people also don't, it seems that they don't choose themselves anymore, that they don't have their own identity in the way they dress. And that's, I don't know if you can blame that to the people. I have the feeling there's just not so much variation in well, the things that you can buy. And strangely enough, I don't feel that I have to dress the world. So that also gives me some freedom. I think I would be really happy if I have my own customers that choose to wear my clothes, but I really don't feel that I have to dress a lot of people. Maybe that's a big difference with a lot of other designers or brands. It's always about more and more and more, and yeah, I don't have that need. So that gives me freedom to design more specific and not to
I'm interested in this idea of the individual and this idea of individuality being lost, because it got me thinking when you mentioned before how you started your career, and you said that you were quite scared of collaborating, and it got me thinking about kind of fear and whether you think people are a bit timid in how they dress, and whether the industry kind of perpetrates that because it doesn't really embrace change. And I think people in fashion, they're quite reluctant, whether it's a new shape or a new material. You said with the ready-to-wear, it's the same thing season in, season out. Do you wish people would be a bit more brave?
Yeah, but again, I don't. It's fine. I think it's hard to to blame that to the customer.
Yeah.
I mean, if I walk in some shops, it doesn't matter in which country so much. It's yeah, you find a lot of the same things, and of course it connects to each other. People become more and more scared to, I think, to dress up, because, for example, yesterday I was talking with Daphne Guinness, and she was also saying like, well, she has the beautiful shoes, and people will always say something about it because, yeah, it's such identity for her. Yeah, I think because in general people are dressing down more and more. The people that show their identity or that dress up, if I can say like that, they get more and more attention, and not everybody wants that. It's the same for me. If I wear or dress up in Amsterdam, you have a lot of attention, and you don't always want that. So it's, yeah.
But do you think people have started to use their clothes now to sort of fit in and to disguise themselves rather than to express themselves?
Yeah, I actually feel it on myself as well. That, yeah. Yeah.
I want to kind of change tack a little bit and talk quite specifically about how you make and produce your clothes. So where do you source most of your materials from? Where do you sort of come across stuff?
It's a bit of a mixture between things. I do a lot of research on the internet. And then there are fairs like the Première Visual and so on. There, of course, we go as well. And then we also have direct connection with companies that we just have an idea and that we ask them to make it for us. And then another way of creating or finding new materials is the people that inspire me, like, or that I collaborate with, like Philip Beasley or even Rachel Armstrong. These are people in a totally other field, but they are on the top of new materials and new innovation. So I always ask the people around me that I know or that I collaborate with as well. Well, I'm looking for this. Do you know something? And Rachel is even doing some experiments for me by creating new silicone. What else?
So do you have to kind of move outside of fashion to get sort of what you need to make your stuff? Like you have to, I guess that's a huge part of what you do is looking at artists or designers.
Yeah.
You have to sort of, you can't get the sort of the stuff you need from within the industry already. But do you try and balance that by using sort of traditional manufacturing as well?
Yeah, I mean, if I go to the Première Visual, it's purely for a good quality of some basics, like a cashmere or a wool or a silk or just the existing materials. You're not gonna find something new over there. Yeah, mostly the newer or the more interesting materials I find outside of fashion, strangely enough. Yeah, in the design world or in the architecture world, a lot of new materials are picked up more easily.
Are they quite comfortable collaborating with you when you approach people like that and you say, you know, I'm putting this in a fashion context? Are they quite excited by that? What's the kind of reaction?
Mostly I don't even bother explaining because people don't understand.
Yeah.
No, you just order the material or you just ask what you want, and yeah, it's people don't have, I think, the imagination to translate that in their heads. No.
What's the most challenging, this is a really hard question, but what's the most challenging piece you've ever produced? Was there something that was so difficult it just wouldn't work and you had to keep going?
Well, the first water piece that I made was one of them, because I think now it looks quite easy what I'm doing, but I did quite a few weeks of experimenting with it before it goes this easy. I remember the first piece that I made was frustrating. Like my assistant, I think she heard me saying, "I'm never gonna do this again," and I think Salvador the same. I said that a few times because it's now I have it quite in my hands, but in the beginning it was totally uncontrollable. You do something here and it changes here. Now I know that, so I have that in my head. But in the beginning I didn't know that, so I had my form here that I liked, and I did something here and it was changing there again, and it was frustration. And what else? Have
you ever had to give up on a piece? Have you ever really wanted to produce something in a particular material and you just had to say, I can't do it?
I have that quite a lot. Especially because I go in the process so freely. I don't want to think about limitations in the beginning. I really like to think in solutions. I like to get to a difficult point and to look for solutions. I think that's actually a big part of my design process, like finding solutions for problems. So if I show a collection of 12 or 14 pieces, I think 16 or 17 are made, and maybe 3 are, just didn't. We couldn't find a solution, or we couldn't find a way to really do it nicely. I mean, in the end, you can do everything, but to do it nicely, it's a second thing, and I have it quite a lot that it doesn't work. No.
So we just need to pause for a card change.
Yeah.
How does it feel sort of when you see your pieces out of the context of a runway or an exhibition and actually on a woman? So, because your clothes have been worn by some incredible people, so you've had obviously Daphne Guinness, but then Björk, Lady Gaga. How does it feel to see your clothing sort of in that context? Do you get the most satisfaction from that?
Yeah, well, especially seeing it real life. I mean, I've been a few times to a concert of Björk wearing one of my pieces, and it's like tripping. It's just strange because you come in different. It almost feels like you come in different times of your life at the same point. I mean, I remember seeing her the first time in New York, singing songs that I used to listen, I don't know, when I was 14 or 15, wearing my dress now. And it really feels like 2 lives come together or something. It feels a bit, I can't almost describe it, but it feels quite unreal. And it's the same for Daphne Guinness. If she wears it, it's almost not this life or something. It feels quite magical. Yeah, it's quite.
So what's next for Iris van Herpen? What's on the horizon?
I'm working on the July show, the Haute Couture, and already on the ready to wear for September.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do a project with Centre Pompidou, also in September, and it's quite a big project.
Busy, God.
Yeah, but it's really nice. That's one of the special projects for this year, and we're also gonna present the water dress we do for SHOWstudio, and the video that we are producing here. So it's all part of it. Yeah.
Well, it's been amazing having you in. Thank you very much, Iris van Herpen.
Thank you so much.